Okay, we're ready. Yeah, I'm going to use one Bible at a time, so we'll just use. Like I said, my name is Jeff Clark. As you can tell, I have a slight accent. People notice that every once in a while. But I was, is that pointing in the right direction? Okay. I've never used I have a PC, so I'm trying to figure out what. Now, technology is a whole new thing for me, you know. I visit the world of technology occasionally. But I grew up in Tennessee, back in the mountains. This is the driveway to our house. Now, this is after you turn off the county road. Y'all understand what I'm saying? This is the farm I grew up on. My dad grew up on. His 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 dad grew up on. You understand? Our farm is the Bethel Clark farm, next to the Gilbert Clark farm, behind the Charlie Clark farm, in front of the Laverne Clark farm, and then Thelberta Miller. She was a Clark who married a Miller. You understand? And so deeply connected. You've heard of clans and all that. I grew up Appalachian. I'm not Southern. I'm Appalachian. Two different cultures. I married a Southern girl. We're a mixed marriage. It's truly two different worlds. I grew up with different words, you know. I might say to a woman, "Oh, you're gaily bedighted today." Everybody knows that, right? Gaily bedighted. It means you're dressed brightly. That's a nice outfit you have on. So there's 200 or more Appalachian words, enough to make it a dialect. You know, anybody know what a poke is? Okay, it's a bag. Yeah, you carry your groceries in a poke. Okay, y'all don't know that. You know Irish? Irish? It's kind of cool outside. It's a bit Irish outside today, ain't it? Okay, so it's not. But now, where I come from, they speak. It sounds like a mouthful of marbles. You know, everybody kind of talk like this. You know what I mean? My wife is from Mississippi. I'm going to come forward right over the edge and just keep preaching. So y'all just, okay. Let me show you a little bit. This is, well, now I've done something wrong here. First, okay. I play a 5-string banjo. Okay, I'm as Appalachian as you can get. I had 3 uncles that were mentally challenged. You see 2 of them in the picture here. The one in the back is the only one still alive, Jimmy. I grew up in a place in the era where people with special needs weren't sent off anywhere. They stayed in the house, and they stayed with my grandparents. And I got wonderful stories I can tell you about them. But like I said, Jimmy is the only one still alive. But these boys loved bluegrass music. And so I learned how to play a 5-string banjo. I played for the World's Fair in New Orleans. I met my wife on Bourbon Street. I played music for the World's Fair in 1984, and we passed out tracts and witnessed, and she helped pass out tracts. Not many preachers can say that they met their wife on Bourbon Street, or would say it if they could. but I started a series of different churches. First place I went was Northern Michigan. Now, Northern Michigan, I'd never been north of Louisville, Kentucky, until I took this church. And there wasn't a church, it's just a community there. Now, I don't know if Michiganders, you can always tell they stick up their hand. Detroit's right here. We were right here. 5 hours north of Detroit. I didn't know there was 5 hours north of Detroit, you know. We thought the whole state was Detroit. And we get up here, there's only one traffic light in the county, and the next 2 counties around us didn't have a traffic light. Y'all understand? These are white people. I thought, well, white people are all the same, right? No, they're not. These were Polish, Catholic, German, Lutheran. The radio station on Saturdays was in Polish. Poka Klim Kamishik. My goodness, that was a whole new world for me. Then I did my time in the wilderness. I went to Orlando, Florida. You know, I started a church. I thought, I got it under my belt now. I'm ready for the big time. I want to start one of them big city churches. Didn't take me long in Orlando to realize I am not a city person. God honored the church. It grew, but I moved very quickly from there to Middle Tennessee and started a church outside of Manchester, Tennessee, about 40 miles from where I grew up. Church starting then, this is all before church starting was popular. I did church starting when people were either called by God to start churches or you couldn't get a church in the South. You know, being Southern Baptist, you know, the best way to get some experience was go up north, start a church, and then you could come back and find you a nice church in the South. You understand? Build up some credibility. And so, but by the time church starting, in the mid-90s, when church starting became real popular, state conventions were looking for, in Southern Baptist world, states were looking for people who can oversee church planting. And since I had 3 church starts, I had wonderful opportunity to go to big places like Ohio, you know, where I could have Cincinnati and Cleveland and Columbus. Instead, I went to West Virginia, okay? But I was on home turf when I got to West Virginia. That's my kind of people, Appalachian people, you understand? I worked from the coal fields all the way up to Chester, and then I moved to Montana. They asked me if I'd come out to Montana, and I'm going, I'm not sure that I know where Montana is on a map. You know, I've never been out west, but they quickly told me that cowboys and hillbillies are just about the same. You know, it's a 4-wheel drive truck, a gun rack on the back, and usually a 6-pack in the side. You know, a dog and a wife. I go, I can work with that. You know, I went out there, I bought me didn't get a Ford truck, but I got a Ford Excursion with a diesel engine. You know, man, that blah, 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 boy, I was there, you know. And I served there, and then God's an amazing God. When we first got married, it has a sense of humor, yes. When we first got married, we thought we'd go overseas, but my wife's father died, and her mother came to live with us. She had some physical and mental problems, and for 17 years she lived with us. And while we were in Montana, she passed away. We had a great opportunity to move to China. Yeah, that's what I said. Man, golly, are you know, Gomer Pyle, Shazam, you know, we're not in Kansas anymore. You know, this is one of those kind of deals. We show up in China, and it's a whole new world. Isn't this a picture? This is a great picture, isn't it? These are people coming for church. That's the church bus. And he's so proud he's got a brand new truck. That's a truck. It's got a 2-cylinder engine. It sounds like an old Poppin' John. Y'all know those old pop, 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 the old John Deere tractors that had the 2 flat cylinders. Well, that's what this thing sounds like, coming up, pop, 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 pop. And they're all waving at one another and ready to come to church. And for 13 years, I did trainings in rural areas all across Asia, China, Korea, Malaysia, Thailand, all across East Asia, teaching rural pastors how to start churches. While we were in China, I don't know if y'all know this or not, this is and still going on, the largest revival in the history of the world. Swamps everything you've ever known anywhere else in the world. In 1949, when they threw out missionaries out of China, there was 1 million Christians. Right now, there's 100 million Christians. 100 million. You get that number? God does amazing things. Now, all this is just to tell you a little bit about who I am. Now, let me get to what I'm here for, okay? I want to talk to you about some realities. Now, next week I'll be 61 years old. Okay? I'll give you a test though. My wife in 2 weeks will be 14. She's a leap year baby. That's right. But that's okay in Tennessee. I want you to understand, I was born in 1961, and since I was born, there's been a seismic shift that has occurred in the United States over the last 50 years. Did y'all know that? Some of you are not aware of this. Okay. In 1972, in my hometown, if you owned a business, you had to go to church. Okay? We lived in a world where no one was going to buy a washing machine from a heathen. Y'all understand that? Some of y'all are not old enough to even know what I'm talking about here. Okay? But today, people buy their washing machines from national chain stores. But when I was a kid, we had these things called blue laws. Anybody familiar with blue laws? When I was a kid, there weren't convenience stores. Boy, that's really old. I'm beginning to sound old. But there wasn't convenience stores. So they had these blue laws. And blue laws was all stores had to be closed on Sunday. There wasn't, when I was a little kid, there wasn't a store open on Sunday in my hometown. Then they started building these convenience stores. And they said, okay, you can be open, but you can't sell alcohol on Sundays. Then they said, well, you can't sell alcohol until afternoon on Sundays, because that's when all the Christians get out of church. I don't know what I don't know what the deal was, but I'm Baptist. And I'm not making any of those jokes. I'm just telling you. And then they just decided, we'll eliminate the blue laws. You can buy alcohol anytime, and the rules changed. And I'm not for the rules, not against the rules. They indicated how the community changed over the years. Make sense? Now, with this, this is called Christendom. Christendom is where Christian values form the basis of my society, where I grew up, and in a lot of places where you grew up. Okay? And decisions were made based off of these Christian values. It might not be said at a town hall meeting, but it was understood that everything's going to be made off of Christian values. Y'all recognize that you grew up in this Christendom world? Now, there's a lot good about Christendom, and there's a lot bad about Christendom. Christendom coerced people into things that they didn't necessarily truly believe. Now, most of us, let's see here. Okay. Most of us were trained by seminary professors on how to minister in Christendom. Our professors grew up in Christendom. They pastored in Christendom. And they assumed that Christendom would be the worldview as far as they could see. When I arrived at seminary in 1983, Christendom was still going strong. The first cracks in Christendom was beginning to really show itself. But all my professors, they didn't know anything else. So I was trained. And here's the thing, if you went to seminary and you got trained and you went off, there's a strong temptation to never learn anymore. You got everything you need. You know, I've read my last commentary, or I've read my last book, or whatever. I know enough now. But the problem is, Christendom has been declining over the last 50 years. And something else has come up. It's called plural. I pushed one too many. I knew I would do this, and he said he could fix this. Okay. Let me skip over here to where we are. Secularism is the other. what happened is we have pluralism now. We have two worldviews. Now, my county is half Appalachian and half Southern. In the southern half of my county, in the late 60s and early 70s, they built a TVA lake. And it's a big, beautiful lake. And people have started moving in. The last time I was home, my parents took me to a subdivision. And in that subdivision, there wasn't a house in that subdivision that was worth less than $750,000. Now, in my county, that's something. You know, you can buy 2 farms for $750,000. This was, the whole north half of my county is different than the rest of my county. The rest of my county are these old farms. When I was telling you about the Clark farms in our area, you can go 2 miles this way and 2 miles this way, and there's not been a farm that has sold in my lifetime. You understand? The north half of the county, they're building subdivisions. So my county now has 2 worldviews. And the new worldview that has come in is secularism. Now, secular people aren't necessarily opposed to Christianity. They just don't care. Okay? Now, that's not always from people moving in. Sometimes it's from the community that you're in, people who grew up Christian, who have just quit going to church. Maybe the parents went every Sunday. The kids started going at Easter and Christmas, and then their kids are just completely secular. They're not against Christianity, and they might give an assent to Christianity, and they might say, I believe in God, but there's nothing in their life, no evidence. They're secular people. Do you understand what I'm saying in this? Secularism is growing in our rural areas. We watched it invade cities, and we thought, boy, aren't we glad we're not like San Francisco. But that same idea, so now my county has these terrible battles between the secular people and the Christendom people, in politics. Before the biggest fight was, are you going to elect a Baptist or a Methodist? Now it's completely secular people who have moved in here from New York City, and now they're running for and getting elected to positions in the county. Can you imagine that? Somebody from New York City on the county committee. Now, currently, these two things are fighting. So how has the church responded to this? Okay. Denial. Right? This is not happening. This is not happening to us. Our county is still Christendom. Okay. In the buckle of the Bible Belt, in the heart of Appalachia, is Pike County, Kentucky. Anywhere you go from Pike County, Kentucky, you're going out of Appalachia. You can't get more in. You have to go out. Pike County has a population of about 55,000 people. It's the largest land mass county in the eastern United States. And it has 106 churches. Get that. 106 churches. Out of those 106 churches, 8.5% of the county goes to church on any given Sunday. 8.5%, that's about 3,500 people. There's 51,000 people in that county who are not in church on any given Sunday. Everybody getting a picture of what I'm talking about here? Now, these are people who Mama and Pawpaw went to church. They know about church, but they decided to live a secular life. And secular means it just doesn't apply to me. Now, old Baptist preacher told me years ago, and I've heard it a million times. You got to get them lost before you can get them saved. Do you understand the phrase? You know, you can't just start talking about salvation if they don't even know what they need it for. Okay? A lot of these people don't know that they're lost and doesn't know what that means. That means you can't start with the Roman road because they don't have any idea of what you're talking about. You have to start with Genesis 1, 2, and 3. So it's a longer, slower road in evangelism. We had lunch today at a Chinese restaurant. They had one here called Golden Taipei. And I go, oh, I've lived in Taipei 13 years. I got to go there at least see if the person is from Taipei. And she was. And we had a religious experience. I don't know what to call that. It was an experience. There's a woman there. We talked to her. And when I left, I told her, Shangdi Jufu Ni, may the Most High God bless you. And she said in Chinese back, and may Buddha bless you. Okay? And she meant that as the most sincere compliment she could give me. To witness to her, you can't start with the Roman road. You can't start with for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God because they don't know what sin is. That's why we have to be missionaries. You understand? I've stopped and gone off track. The thing about PowerPoint is I have to come back to it sometime. But a lot of us are in, a lot of churches are in denial, and they just keep trying the Roman road with people who don't know what in the world they're talking about. What's our next response? Blame. Now, churches are good at this, right? You can blame the pastor. Any of y'all ever had that? Well, if he just preached better sermons, people would come in here, you know. Just our preacher, he's just lazy. You know. They don't know that you was up all night the night before with some yahoo, and then you can't tell them because you had to, you know, how those things go, right? Or you can blame the people. Well, it's them New Yorkers that moved into our town. Man, they've ruined everything, you know. You can blame the media. Man, it's Oprah Winfrey's fault. You know, or whoever Helen, I don't know who they are now. Ellen DeGeneres. I don't, but you know what I'm saying? Blame, 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 blame. Okay? How about this one? Nostalgia. Oh, if we could just get back to like we were in 1974. You know, the Baptist fight song in 1974 was Victory in Jesus. You know, victory in Jesus. You know, if we could just get back to singing them hymns and having real preaching, glory, hallelujah, amen. You know what I'm talking about? Our church would grow back like it did in the 70s. We grew back in the 70s. Our church was full of people. You remember when that was? Folks, we can never go back to 1974. We just can't do it, nor should we try. And I personally love hymns. I like courses and stuff, but I love hymns. I grew up on them. But I'll sing Old MacDonald Had a Farm if it'll lead people to Christ. Okay? I don't have any problem with different styles of songs if it'll reach people for Christ. The next one, withdrawal. Becomes us four and no more. It's us versus them out there. We blame, we withdraw, and we just sit in here and we go, there's nothing we can do. They won't listen to us. We tried witnessing. We tried Vacation Bible School. We tried Block Party. We tried our denomination's evangelism outreach tool that they made, you know, for us. We go, well, we tried the evangelism tool that they invented down in Atlanta. like that's going to work, you know. I remember they told us when I was in Montana one time, said, here's the program. You need to go out, and you need to go out every Tuesday and make visits. Now, I said, well, help me to figure out how to do this in Circle, Montana. Circle has 350 people, and that's the county seat. There's not another. The next town over is 45 miles, and it has 150. So, okay, 3 weeks in after we've witnessed to everybody in our county, what are we supposed to do? That's when they realized this was built on the law of large numbers. You know, if you just keep visiting enough people, you'll find enough responses. When there's not large people, there's not a large number of people in Circle, Montana. You know what I'm saying? And so what happens is these churches your church gets tired, worn out. We've tried everything. Nothing works. These people aren't like how I grew up. Just let me live out my days, die. I had a church literally tell me that one time. They called me and said, we're down to 15 people. Can you help us? What should we do to reach our community? So I started telling them some things, and they go, that's too much work. We're going to deed the property to you, and when we die, we're going to hand it over to you. What do you tell them? Well, I had some things I wanted to say, but, you know, you just have to let them die. Because they've withdrawn and they've moved to despair. And despair is when you tacitly believe that God can't fix it. This is a sin. Christians should never despair. You can be overwhelmed, but never despair. Despair is saying it's beyond fixing. It's beyond repair. It's beyond. Let me give you an example. I don't think I have a picture of it in any of my slides, but my mom and dad go to a little country church. They now have indoor bathrooms. You know, we used to have 2 buildings. Y'all familiar with second building? You know you're from the country if you've ever limed your bathroom. Anybody ever pour a bag of lime down that hole? Okay. So back about 5 years ago, this church got down to about 8 people. Anybody know any churches like this? Got down to about 8 people, and our leadership, the denominational leadership said, well, we need to start looking at how to close this down and help them do something with this. How do you start a church out here in the middle of nowhere? You know, there's not enough people. There's not enough anything. How can we do this? And so one of the little old ladies in the church says, well, my grandson teaches a Sunday school class at Big First Baptist in town. Maybe he'd come out and be our pastor. This would be less people than he has in his Sunday school. And so he comes out and becomes their pastor. The whole idea is that this church is going to die with at least some kind of dignity, right? Nobody told Jason this. You know, somebody should have let him in on the plan, because 9 months later, they're running 90. And the church runs about 100 right now. And filled with young people, kids everywhere. Now, he's had 2 online classes so far, okay? So his first VBS, they were shooting bow and arrows. I'm going, Jason, I might not do that, you know. But it was very culturally relevant for my county, you know. But I'm just thinking, oh, I would have shot somebody if I was 9 years old, you know. So, you know, but there's no church that should ever fall into despair if they believe in an all-powerful God. If our God can raise the dead, he can revive a church. Okay. Well, realizing nowhere in our our Bible, there's nowhere in this Bible does it say, go and grow a church. What's our task? Make disciples. Okay, pastors, I'm going to give you a free sermon outline right here for the Great Commission. There's one word in there 4 times. Very important. The word is all. All authority has been given unto me. That's why we go. Where do we go? All nations. What do? We teach all things. And what's the promise? I will be with you always. That'll preach. You can use it this next Sunday, and you don't have to footnote me. Okay, because I'm sure I stole it from somewhere else. But you understand? It is, the thing is, we have an all-powerful God who has all authority in heaven and on earth, and he has sent us into all the world to make disciples of all nations. The byproduct of making disciples is growing churches. If your first goal is to grow a church, you'll take any yahoo that comes in the door. That's not what we're called to do. What is it then that missionaries do? I want to talk to you about doing this from a missionary mindset. And this one I'm going to be talking about the rest of the day and tomorrow, okay? What does a missionary do? Okay? What is the goal of a missionary? Somebody answer that question for me. What's the goal of a missionary? Out loud. Share the gospel with somebody who isn't saved. Right. Let me show you this. This is very important. Very, very important. The goal of a missionary is to reach a people group, a city, or an area with the gospel. When we landed in China, we were in a city, and the goal was to reach the whole city for Christ. Now that's different than a pastor, okay? The goal is not just to start one church, okay? The goal is to reach the entire target area with the gospel. You understand the difference between the two? So when you start talking about having a missionary mindset, like you said, this is not some little change. This is, you're going to change the whole DNA of who you are maybe and of what you're doing. Where you look at where you are and say, what must I do to reach my entire county for Christ? Realizing that to reach them, some of these people are not going to go to my church. Well, doesn't the Bible say repent and be Baptist? No, it doesn't say that. If it did, I wouldn't be here. You understand? The thing that, I'll give you an example. We started a church in Tennessee, and we had lots of young families pouring in. And it was pretty wild on Sundays. These children have never been in church before. And, so it makes a pretty hairy church sometimes. And I had an older family, a couple, come in and sit down on first Sunday. And after church, you know how people are willing to give pastors advice? I usually get it right before I preach, but thankfully she came at the end and she goes, these kids are running wild. You need to do something to get control of these kids. I said, ma'am, these kids, this is the first time they've been in church. And this is the way we're going to be. I think you would like First Baptist in town much better. It's 8 miles into town. She goes, are you trying to get rid of me? I said, no, ma'am. I have no sense of competition. I'm trying to find you where you belong. And if children make you uncomfortable, First Baptist is where you ought to be. So, out the door, she and her husband went, About 3 months later, a family shows up in a church. I've never seen them before. And I go, how did y'all find out about it? She goes, well, we have 2 kids, and we went to First Baptist. And this lady said she thought we'd be more comfortable out here. I said, it's working right, yes. our goal is to reach the community for Christ, okay? So the very first thing you have to do then is learn the language and culture. So the first thing I had to do when I landed in China was what? Learn Chinese. Okay. See, I took English as a second language. You know, I speak Hilbonics. So when I got to China, you know, I had to learn Chinese. I'm one of the very few Appalachians you'll ever meet who speaks Chinese. You know, we're just very few to come by. But with that language, you also learn culture. And learning this language and culture is vitally important to learning how to witness. And I tell you this because learning the language of secular people in your community is vital. Listen. Learning the language of your community is important because each community has a different language and culture. If you moved to my hometown, you'd have to learn a whole different set of words and culture to be able to minister in that area. Does that make sense? If I moved out here, I'd have to learn I can communicate, but to communicate to an old rancher out here that doesn't go to church somewhere, I might have to learn some words that are used here that aren't used in my county. I mean, I know quite a bit of words coming off a farm, you know. I can tell a Holstein from we grew limousines. My dad, when I was a little kid, we had Herefords, you know, white face. Then we moved to limousines, and my cousin, he has Santa Gertrudis. They don't have them up here, I don't think, because they don't stand cold weather too well, right? Y'all have Charolais a lot more, and Angus. But you have to learn that kind of language and you have to learn the language of the secular people in your community to be able to communicate with them. And then you have to witness to lost people. Well, I just pushed that once. Did they all come up at one time? Wow, okay. There's everything I was thinking. The truth about witnessing is it doesn't cost anything. You know, churches always, well, we can't do that new program. You know, it costs too much money. Well, it don't cost anything to tell people about Jesus. You don't usually have to get some kind of committee approval. Most churches like it when their preacher witnesses. Right? I don't know of anybody, and it may happen, and I'm sure somebody's going to come up and tell me about it. Yeah, my committee brought me in, my leadership committee set me down and said, Jeff, you're just witnessing too much. You need to slow down on this witnessing. Anybody had that problem? You want to know how to fix problems in your church? Get you a whole bunch of new people. Witness to them. Bring them in. I want you to understand that the keys to being an effective witness is knowing the language and being intentional. And that you can't make an estimate of how many people you're going to baptize in the next year. But you can make an estimate of how many people you're going to witness to in the next month. I am going to witness to 2 people a week. Whatever your number is. 5, 1 a day. Whatever your number is. You don't come home until you do that. And this ain't rocket science. When 3:15, right? You know what it means when a Baptist looks at his watch? Nothing. Okay? No. But you have to be intentional about this witnessing. You have to go out and you have to say, I'm not coming home until I do this. I'm not finishing my week until I do this. I'm going to be intentional about it. And usually to be intentional, you need somebody to hold you accountable. Did you witness this week? Well, you know, I have a bone in my leg. And, you know, did you witness this week? Well, my dog got sick. You know, did you witness this week? Did you take your dog to the vet? Yeah. Did you witness to the vet? Well, no, you know, it wasn't the right time. You know, y'all, preachers don't ever use those excuses, right? Just as I am. We're going to have an invitation in just a minute. Okay. Now, notice this next one. Missionaries focus on discipleship. Okay? That is, new Christians should be disciples so that they can witness to others. This is how you take an outside religion in China and make it an inside religion. Well, let's do it the other way around. I'll give you an example. Let's say a Chinese man moves to here and decides he wants to start a church in Colby, Kansas. What's going against him? Okay? First of all, he doesn't know the language. And if he knows English, he still doesn't know the language. He doesn't know the culture. He goes down here. I don't know where people in Colby gather. Where do all the old men gather in Colby? Okay, Village Inn. Let's say. So he goes in the Village Inn. He just sits down with all the old men right there. They're looking at him like an alien just dropped out of the sky. Right? But he works at it, and after 8 or 9 years, he may have 1 or 2 people who even like him. You understand how hard that is for him? Well, what I've done is just the opposite. I went into China and did it the other way around. Can you imagine I was told in my training before I moved over, said, China, intense place, you need to learn how to blend in. 6'3", 200 and a lot. Blend. What's plan B? Yeah. Go big enough that they know when you're gone. I guess that's the biggest plan. And so you can't not witness. But when you, like pastor here, moved into the community, you got an advantage. Your wife's from here. But one of the things you do when you start doing this is you witness to somebody, and when they become a Christian, you disciple them to witness. Because when they witness, it's one of them talking to one of them. You can live in my county, in Franklin County, Tennessee. You can live in that county on the south half of my county your whole life and still be an outsider. Yeah, the Fulkersons, they moved over there in 1952. They're not one of us. 1952, you understand? There's no way for them to become one of us. And pastors, the truth is, it takes a mighty long time in the church where you're at to become one of them. But you can very quickly disciple them to reach them. Does that make sense? Now I'm going to give you a free one. I was probably going to say it somewhere else. I'll just do it now. And that is, learn how to take your language from they to we. Well, people in my town, they do this. Well, people in my town, we do this. Do you hear the difference between the two? You'll never truly minister in your county, in your town, as long as you're saying they. When you say we, you're finally beginning to be a part of that community. Does that make sense? Everybody with me on this? Okay, let me do a couple more. One of the things we do is, the other one, I said that one, I'll leave all my PowerPoints, and if anybody wants these, Steve will send them to you, okay? They're just, I don't own anything. I don't get royalties off anything. If they will help you, great. One of the things that missionaries do is they leverage their resources. When you move into a people group, like we have an unengaged, unreached people group in China that's 1.2 million people. 1.2 million people, and there's not one person telling them about Jesus. There's not one person. We don't know of anybody working with that people group to tell them about Jesus. We have about 3,000 well, I don't know what the number is now. It's still thousands of these unreached people groups. But this big people group, when you, let's say you heard me today, you get all inspired and you move over to that people group. You land in the middle of their area of 1.2 million people. You're going to quickly realize that if my goal is to evangelize this whole group, we're going to have to do something different. So, if we started witnessing one by one, Wayao gasu ni jiangi gagushu, jagagushu bushu bienda, jusher jinda shangdi de hua, shangdi a ni, shangdi tuanzani, tanjuan za ta, tanjuan ta ta. How long is this going to take? First of all, I got to learn all this. Then I got to say all this. And then he says, bug off. Wayao gasu ni jiangi gagushu, jagagushu bushu bienda, jusher jinda shangdi de hua, shangdi tuanzani, ta, ta zhang wan ta ai ni, ta ai wo, ta gei ni, ta da shang di de erzi. Ni ming bai ma? Bu ming bai. Oh, okay. How long is this going to take for me just to get to this ring? I've got to leverage resources. Pastors, if you want to reach your community, you're going to have to leverage your resources. A lot of us think we have to do it alone. That's what I'm getting paid for. We're going to talk about that in the next session. Okay? But if I come over here and I tell him, and he says, well, Sheen need a gusher. I believe what you're saying. Oh, how bang! Now, I don't go to her next. I stay right here. Why? I'm trying to leverage what I'm doing. My goal is not to get to every person personally in this ring. My goal is to train him. Now, stand up. Now, ni gasuta. Waya gasuni jangi gagusha. Kaima. Okay. Okay. So he's going to tell her. I'm going to come over here and tell this heathen. Okay. Chris. Shangdi ani. Ta gay wa ta da bao guai da erza. So neo yon. Ni ming bama. And he goes, yes, I understand. She understands. Now we have 4. You understand how this works? I know it's a Ponzi scheme. Okay? Or Amway or whatever you want to call that. But in Christianity, this works. When we start getting our members of our church out witnessing, I think that COVID has shown us our overwhelming lack of discipleship. Folks, if we had to get back to any one thing, it must be discipleship. Because through discipleship, you're able to leverage your limited finances, your limited resources, your limited whatever it is. And get back to the one thing that doesn't cost anything, witnessing. There's only one scripture really in the Bible that says what a preacher ought to be doing. What does a pastor do? He equips the saints to do the work of service. Many of us have been doing the work of service, which God has not asked us to do. He's asked us to leverage what we're doing so that other people can do the work of service. When we were in the church in Tennessee, I don't know, God just blows up things mighty wild sometimes. And that church just started growing. People started coming in. And you know how it is after a while, the state leadership said, Jeff, would you come up and teach us what you're doing? I said, I can't. And they said, well, tell us about all the people you're leading to Christ. I said, I haven't led anybody to Christ. They go, but you've had like 40 baptisms. I go, yeah. It's like this. I decided I wanted to go fishing. Hillbillies tell stories. I decided I wanted to go fishing. I get out to the lake. I put my anchor down. I pick up the worm, I'll lick him and put him on the... Y'all always lick him, right? Well, maybe not. But you put him on the hook, and as I get ready to throw him in, I hear whap. I turn around in the back of the boat, there's a 3-pound bass. Well, look at that. I go back there and I pick him up and I put him on the stringer. As I'm putting him on the stringer, I hear wham. I go up here and there's another 2-pound bass up here. I said, all I've been doing is picking up fish that my church members have been bringing in. I can't teach you anything. If you want to know, you should have Mr. Bill come. And you should have Glenn come and some of the other members of my church. They're the ones who are bringing people in because they're excited about what we're doing. And they're actually witnessing. See, when you equip the saints to do the work of service, you're leveraging your limited resources to do more than you could possibly do on your own. And it grows, and it grows, and it grows. Now I'm going to stop and do something real strange. I got a couple of minutes. Anybody have a question you'd like to ask at this point? Y'all looking at me like a calf at a new gate. You know, do I go through this? Really, it's not any good if you can't take this home with you. I'm not trying to promote some kind of program. You notice I'm not telling you, here's a program that'll fix all your problems. You know, that program worked great in Atlanta. It worked great in Houston. It doesn't work so well in Kobe or Imperial or wherever, Witnessing does. Leveraging does. Learning the language and culture does. Being intentional does. That's why I want to know, if you have something, you don't have to agree with me. You can push back. I can take it. I'm a big man. I leave here and you don't affect my salary. Okay? But as I go along, I'm going to teach again here in a few minutes. When I do, if you have questions, please ask me. I want to do what it takes to help you get this. I want to help you develop a missionary mindset for your community. That my goal is not to grow my church. My goal is to reach my community for Christ. That means if I have to help other churches get better in my community, I will help other churches. If it means that I have to give people away from my church to go other places, I will give them away. I'm going to talk about that later tonight, about the difference between a pastor's mindset and a missionary mindset. Both are called by God, but I want you to understand those differences. So I'm going to just stop right now and we're going to take a break. Okay?
Thank you very much, Jeff. Could you give him a hand? I appreciate that. We have a number of workshops, and we weren't sure with COVID. I'm not sure we needed this many workshops for the number of people that ended up registering, but all of these workshops are lined up with what we're talking about, and I just want to share with you quickly what they are. First of all, if you stay right in this room, Jeff, these will meet in around 15, 20 minutes here. Jeff is going to walk us through understanding rural. So if you're interested in a rural mindset, those types of things, Jeff is going to teach that. Then Pastor Andrew Hurlbert, if you'll stand up, Andrew, just so they know who you are. Andrew is the lead pastor at Lamont these days. He has done a lot of work on what does it mean to make disciples in a rural setting. He's going to be right down this hall. There's a conference room at the end of this hall. He's going to be down there. Then Melissa Landis is going to talk to us. Melissa, if you just sort of raise your hand or something. Melissa is a part of the Lamont congregation, but she's one who's been leveraged and has been sent. And these days, she works around Kansas with jail ministry for women and with addiction things for women as well. And she's going to talk to any of you who are interested in how do you do that type of thing? How do you, if you're going to transform a culture, that's part of it, right? And she's going to be at do you call it the fellowship hall next door? What do you call it?
The ministry center.
The ministry center. We're going to minister over there, not fellowship over there. Very good. But it's right there at the next, in the next building over. They have to go outside and go down for that.
Yes.
the content of these and send them to everyone, because I would want you to go to every single one of these. In fact, I'm almost like, let's just change the schedule. Let's just go through these one by one. But Fred and Marvia. Now, how many of you know Fred and Marvia? Yeah, they think you're incredible. Just so you know. But Fred is, well, he's a dirt roads roadside assistant. That's what he is. And he goes around to churches all through this region. And Fred and I have talked. And Fred, I'm going to put you. I'm going to say something that I don't have your permission to say. Fred gets so frustrated with pastors that are trying to do it themselves rather than enabling their congregation to be missionaries. And so he has examples. See, I love, he got to, church happens out there and everyone is on staff is what Fred is teaching us. And I believe he's down this hall. Where is he? Is he in the high school working out? I think I announced it wrong. I should have wrote it. Andrew's upstairs. Fred's down this hall.
Andrew's upstairs. Fred's over there.
Yes.
And
Melissa's over there. And Jeff's in here. That's right. Okay. So since I've made that completely confusing for you, we will go through it one more time real quick. Jeff is going to be in here, understanding role. We're going to have Fred down the hall here talking about everyone is on staff. Andrew is going to be upstairs. There's a youth room upstairs. He's going to talk about discipleship. And next door is Melissa talking to us about jail ministry in Kansas. So we have drinks out here. We have some candy out here, those types of things. Mingle. If you see someone you don't know, I love pastors, but I want to tell you what I've noticed going to all these different conferences. Every one of us on Sunday morning get up and say, if you see someone, we say this to our people, if you see someone you don't know, go welcome them and make them feel welcome here. And then you come to a place like this and you see lots of people you don't know and you don't talk to them, and then you say, I don't fit in here. Okay, so is that being too honest, Jeff? That's the way it works. So if you don't know someone, go up and introduce yourself to someone, find out where they're from, get to know them. Let's have 15, 20 minutes here of just mingling, and then we'll go to our workshops. Thank you very much.
heckle him a little bit.